My Sheep, Earthquake Reports, and more. And we just killed the last trial episode because
number 10.
Because our very
Senior
16-year-old cat started yowling in the background. She, of course, had gotten into her bed and was facing the wall and was lost again. She yowls quite loudly. So anyway, that was the cause of our last episode being canceled, and we're going to try again. What are we doing today, Esther?
We're doing If You Knew.
If you only knew.
If you only knew, what would you do? And it's not about a cat facing the wall and going, wow, for 2 minutes in going, you guys are so bad, I have got to yowl.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. So, anyway.
It's the 28th of October.
It's the 28th of October. As you can see, we're still unprofessional, or as I like to call it, we're very personable.
But we're not vacuuming.
That's right. We're not vacuuming. We've never vacuumed and will not vacuum. I abhor vacuuming. So anyway, just a joke. No offense to anyone intended. Anyway, it is the 28th of October. We're doing something a little unusual. It's called If You Knew. And this was prompted this morning by the need to be more for all of you folks on a geophysical, political, and faith level, is to be more, to give you more of what you need to know to get through your day, to get through the next few months, the next few years.
Yep.
Right? So, this is what prompted this today. And I think before we go any further, we should have a prayer.
Absolutely.
Right?
Because all of our programs are dedicated to our Heavenly Father service. So let's begin. Heavenly Father, Abba, we thank you that you continue to protect this program, and you offer us protection, shelter under your wings, but you also, through your Son, shepherd us. And we thank you, Jesus, for that shepherding you continue to give us the direction that we should go to help others. And we thank you, Holy Spirit, that you continue to give us peace, joy, and understanding through the spirit of discernment that you bring. And all of this through your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Alrighty, so now, Terry and I were having coffee this morning, and he was telling me about finding 60 volcanoes just in Oregon alone on the volcano discovery map, and that he had gone and he's found more that are not listed, that are they just about steaming, or they've...
Well, there's two of the three that I found in Oregon. Mary's Peak has shown steam releases, and so has Edson Butte. So there's two that are actively steaming, which means they're recharging with magma. And Edson or Bosley Butte has very large reactivation signals without showing any steam signals. So
the Blue Mountain Array is going crazy.
Yeah.
In the northeast area of Oregon and over into Idaho.
And that gets into what volcanic formation?
The Yellowstone, off of the Seven Devils,
yeah.
which actually scientists are thinking actually helped Yellowstone develop and get going, because Seven Devils was so much bigger and older, way older. So anyway, got to thinking, I thought, you know what? If people knew that these three new buttes or peaks were going, that they didn't know about before, what would they do? How would they respond to it? Would they get enough information in time? And no, if they knew this was in their neighborhood, they needed to prepare now.
And what I look at is, people look at volcanoes in Oregon and they think Crater Lake, Newberry craters,
all those up and
Sisters,
Hood.
Mount Hood. And those are the big ones, Jefferson.
I mean, we've shown you plenty of.
But that's
heliplots and seismograms and
5-6 volcanoes. That ignores Mount Bailey, Mount McLaughlin, all of these many others, and vast volcanic fields. Some of these volcanic fields are over 100 square miles.
Yeah.
And they're interconnected in many cases through other features, and there's faults running through. There's just so much. And to have a correct understanding of what you should do, you have to know the whole threat
of what's going on. So we were thinking, well, what would you do if you knew there was a volcano in your area? And we had thought about it, and we thought about the earthquakes in our area, and we actually took the plunge, as it were, because of where we live. We went, we need a wood cook stove, because we don't know if we're going to be able to get propane to cook, to heat our home with. So what do we do?
And I thought about how do we, if we run out of fuel, if we don't have electricity, how do we continue to cut wood? So part of that was me getting a great big old-fashioned bucking saw.
Yeah.
And tools.
Right. And what if you knew, if you were in the city, that there was something in your area? What would you do? Where would you go? How would you do it? And what? Oh, you need hard assets. Yeah, okay. We talked to both of our financial advisors, and we had done this on part of the prompting of wanting to get a wood cook stove, right, that we could use to heat the house, feed ourselves and feed others, because we know others are coming. We had listened to an Amanda Grace episode, and she had her financial advisor on, and he's Christian. And we're going, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Then we went and talked to ours.
Who's also Christian.
And
oblivious.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because we were talking about, okay, is our money safe? What little that we have, because we're both pension. And we both managed to have a little bit put away to be able to draw on. And it was enlightening. It was disheartening in a lot of ways, because the government has so tied our hands. But we had also wanted to know if, because of the bail-ins, and they're in the U.S. and they're in Canada.
What's a bail-in?
A bail-in means that if a bank's derivatives are too expensive for them to pay and they're going to fail, that they can take, I think right now in Canada it's 20% to start with.
Of your assets.
Of your savings, any of your monetary assets.
Yeah.
And
that are tied to the bank.
Yes, that are tied to the bank. Your savings account, whatever. And so we thought, well, we're going to ask if that also means our RSPs, lifts, everything. And we were told that no, that's private mutual, so that can't be touched. And we're kind of going,
but at the same
sure.
time, consider if things are that bad for the banks, isn't that going to mean a great threat to the stock market? And what this bank analyst for Amanda Grace was saying is there's a great an increasing risk based on added debt relative to gross national product. And it gets kind of technical, but basically if your debt becomes too big that you can't pay it off, you can collapse your monetary system. You start hitting the hyperinflation issues, and as Germany did.
But where are we already with hyperinflation on food, on goods and services coming in? And we're not going to get into the political of that. That's for part 2.
Yeah.
But that's there. Consider that. Now, tie this back into, he said, you need hard assets like land, like tools, like seed, like food set away. And we're adding to that, yes, because we've been preparing for quite a while. Food, shelter, water. If you don't have those, you're hoop-dee-doo. Add to that fuel, seeds, even if you have a small patio garden because you live in a city area. Mm-hmm. And I know about city areas. I lived in San Francisco, 4 blocks up from Union Square on Post. And that's about as city as you can get. And yet I knew how to either, I had a car parked there, didn't drive it because it's too prohibitive. But I took buses, and I knew how to get on a bus, work the transit system to get further out to get supplies, either going across the Golden Gate and up through that area or out to Oakland and over. So I know it can be done. So if anybody says, well, I live in a city and I can't do this, yes, you can.
Yep.
And it's on you to do that for yourself, for your family, for your neighbors. Okay?
And
so that's, I mean, I kind of got sidetracked there. That's the city. But as far as we are with rural, we're looking at the hard assets of what we can do here to grow gardens, to grow orchard, to feed others who are going to be in need as well. Because so many people, even where we live, have their heads in the sand. Now, tie this to the volcanoes, right?
Well, let's
Which is
tie
what
this,
we're talking about.
Tie this to what you were saying of working together.
Yes.
It's so much more efficient in scale for people to specialize and work together in groups because everybody has their strengths. So if you rely on just yourself, you have a limited number of skills and a limited number of resources. And that includes strength of prayer, but it also includes physical protection because where two or more are gathered as a church, but also two can defend much better than one. And then if you increase that to, let's say, six working together makes a huge difference compared
10, 20.
You know, so we need to gather together to work together in communities.
Right, exactly.
And so that's a really important part of this. If we know what's coming, if we know that there's famine coming, that there's volcanic activity coming, that there's earthquakes coming, all of these things, we need to take steps to prepare. And this is a case of if we knew there were going to be eruptions in the near future, what would we do ahead of time if we had known?
Yes. And so that ties back in, though, to what prompted me in the first place going, hey, wait a second, you need to bring news about these other things. You don't have to always show all of the seismograms and helipods because you've trained everyone really well to look at them. But if you've got these other volcanoes or these other faults going through and you say, hey, there's a new one here, I'm going to keep an eye on them, and if something big is going on, like steam vent releases that have never happened before, or major VLFs or shifting, I'm going to tell you about it. And if it warrants it, I'll bring out a seismogram on it. But you need to know. I mean, whether because you're in that area or you have family or friends in that area.
That's why last program, what we pointed to with all the new sites that we discovered is that the whole perimeter of Yellowstone, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, it's all reactivating all around the perimeter. That's significant because there's multiple. And that ties
back into western Idaho, eastern Oregon, southeast Washington.
That's right.
It's
because we've got eastern Washington volcanoes reactivating, the ghost volcanoes of eastern Washington, Hanford. Somewhat in northern and through Hanford, yes. Excuse me. And somewhat, I'm stealing FaceTime. See, if I go like this, I get more of it centered up. There you go.
My face is bigger than yours. You'll never win.
I'll move back. She's even larger now.
Yeah. Whoa.
But there's an awful lot of activity that people are not generally aware of, and it's very important to be aware of it because how do you make contingency plans for yourself?
Right.
Based on the threats that are in your area, unless you know about them.
Right. So we were talking about the financial, and we'd talked to our person, and not to go into it too far, but good Christian man. Loved doing business with a Christian business. But he was absolutely oblivious to what is going on with the political. And to talk to him about supply chain and totally forget natural disasters. And we kind of went, ugh. All right, we need to make sure that we have enough hard assets so that if and when money fails, we're covered. And we thought, you guys need to be doing that as well. Hard assets. Now, if you can buy land, great. There's a lot of situations where there are folk who have land and you can go to caretake on them, have your own place, caretake, or rent. And even if it's just a small plot to grow food on, or to have a goat or a few chickens, that's what you do. And that is a hard asset that a bank cannot take away. That is a hard asset if you know you're in a fairly secure area, no lahars or lava flows or pyroclastic kabluis or anything like that, and you can go and look in your areas or your family's areas or your friends' areas and see where these volcanoes are, and you know how to look for a caldera. Terry has shown you time and again in pictures, right? This is what one looks like. You can kind of get a good idea of volcanic fields. And if you know where they are and you look and you see the dark gray areas around them or bare of vegetation, you know that there's been flows there and they're, quote, recent. And that they're likely to go that way again. So
a thought just crossed my mind as well, and let me know what you think of this. I'm aware that farmers are having great difficulty getting workers.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And they want to keep their land farmed, but they don't have the means of doing it themselves. Now, this actually provides a great opportunity for individuals to set up, for instance, a 5-year lease and prepay a 5-year lease. It's so much cheaper than actually buying the land.
It's a good idea.
You can lease a small, and I'm not talking about a section of land, but a portion of a land, because a section
Talk to local farmers who are hurting. I mean, it can be a half acre.
Yeah.
Or a quarter acre. I wouldn't go smaller than a quarter acre, but if you can lease a half acre and even put a fifth wheel or something on it,
yeah,
or near it, that you can be at, that is a brilliant way to go.
And so you might be able to get a 5-year lease of a half acre for, let's say, $1,000.
Who knows? We don't know.
I don't know the cost of doing something like that, but there are
these farmers are hurting because the smaller farmers are being driven out by the big manufacturer farm.
Yeah, and right? They're being forced by their banks. They're looking for a means of income. So if they can get $1,000 from this group, $1,000 from that group, $1,000 for that group, if you add 10 of these groups and you get $10,000 out of it, that's a big deal to the farmer.
Yeah, or even if you need help harvesting, what if we can harvest these for you, give you some money for them, and trust me, farmers get a very, very small cut of what goes and then goes to the producers, distributors, and final retailers. And if you could give them something close to what they're getting for their chickens, for their eggs, for their fruit and vegetables, and harvest and take that back to your group at that price, that saves the farmer.
Yeah.
We have to save the farmer, right?
If they're going to take the ability of getting the food to you away by shutting down the trucking, by keeping the shelves empty, if they're going to take that away, you've got to move to where the food is.
Yes, exactly.
Where it can be produced. And you have to be willing to take that step. If you knew famine was coming, what would you do? We know that famine is coming.
And it's here.
It's already impacting, and we need to act.
Right. So now you tie this in with your volcanic activity in different areas. We know there's going to be earthquakes. Real BP Earthwatch put out 2 notices today. The X-ray already came in, but there's a big, huge CME plasma, and you should have seen the plasma bursting off the surface of the sun.
Yeah.
Just a little while ago.
And that sunspot was the size of, 91 Earths?
109 Earths.
109 Earths, okay.
Yeah. So, I just did a Terry. Wow.
Yeah, good for you.
Ooh, scary. And accuracy in numbers, which is really hard for me to do anyway. So anyway, this was huge, and it's definitely in the M class. And in the M class, we know that agitates volcanoes and earthquakes. And VLFs, all of it. We know it agitates it. And it's supposed to hit sometime late Friday morning to anywhere late in the afternoon on Saturday. So you have a window there. Real BP was talking 12 noon Eastern time. And guess what? North America is the sun facing.
Yeah.
We are the sun facing when this thing is supposed to hit.
Because when it hits noon Eastern time, it's square hitting the East Coast at noon. Now, it's going to be
it's 9 a.m. in the morning for us.
It'll be a little more of a glancing blow
for Europe. But they're saying
for Western continental U.S. and Canada. It'll be less impact because it'll be more of an angle.
9 a.m. But Yeah, but he's saying, though, that it will encompass the globe. This one is going to encompass the globe.
Yeah.
Whoa. So the heaviest hit is the sun side facing.
Yeah.
Right? So that's us.
And
so to be aware of this.
It can have a 7-hour window before or after, but so that's the general time is noon Saturday, East Coast. So and we'll have to watch to see when it actually does hit.
Yeah, and we'll see what the volcanoes are doing, what the active ones, the ones that are maybe reactivating, what faults are going on, if there's an increase in number or size of earthquakes, right?
Yep.
So
this
if
may be
you knew,
would you protect your electronics?
Would you protect your... Yes, protect your electronics. If you knew, do you have seed ready? Do you have winter clothing ready to go?
Yeah.
Right? That's going to keep you warm. Bedding, blankets. Do you have water? And yes, you've heard all of this before from us and from other people. Think longer term. Okay? If you knew that all this was being aggravated, and you have a very real possibility of losing your assets, your hard assets, your money.
Would you turn some of that? What is the hard asset that is most valuable to you the soonest? It's really, it's food. It's storage ability. It's barter goods. It's food, shelter, and water. And food, I'm repeating myself, but it's also what you have to barter and what you have to maintain yourself long term.
And also medicine.
Oh, absolutely.
How many times have we talked about natural medicines? Pharmaceuticals are going to be hard to come by. Okay? If you look at natural alternatives, you can take that bus out of San Francisco into a park area, or find someone who crafts natural medicines and teas that have medicinal purposes further out, and go shopping if you can't forage your own. You can take buses out there. You can rent a car and you can go if you are in a big, huge city area. If you're in a rural, start looking. Even in your lawn, there are foods, there are weeds that are put there that are medicinal. Right? The crazy one is wild lettuce or opium lettuce. It is very tall,
it's got to be
dandelion type weed that has a white milky substance to it. But you need to learn about it because that is a painkiller and it's non-addictive.
Yeah.
Right?
It takes quite a process to get it down to its concentrated form where it's effective, but it's doable.
Very doable. It's not.
There's anti-asthmatic medication, natural ones out there.
In the plant called elecampane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's lots of anti-inflammatories. There's lots that promote good breathing in the lungs outside of asthma. There's things that detox your liver and help functions. Yeah.
And a lot of them are anti-parasitical.
Yeah.
Very, very important.
So it's important to get to have an understanding. While you develop an understanding, while you have access to the information, if you lose all the electronics that allow you to do the searches that you have to do to get all this written down, that's going to create a great challenge. And that will mean at that point...
Start a notebook.
That will mean at that point, when the communications go down, we won't be able to tell you.
Right. So, and to the notebook, not only just write down the information on them, get some supplies and start using them. Start experimenting, start learning how they respond to your body, because not everything works for everybody. That's why Father made so many different things.
Yeah.
Because one, where we live, and two, he knew and he knows that not everything works for everybody. It's not blanket medication like the pharmacies try to tell you it is. Right? So, get to know these natural alternatives and try them out on yourself. They're very safe to do so for you and your family's particular problems. If you have neighbors who are elderly and you know that they're going to run out of X, Y, or Z, and if there's a natural that will help them, then that's what we do. That's what you do.
And it's not
when you are feeding your flock, according to Jesus and Father's will, that's what you do.
And not only that, but in foraging for food, there's people that walk on and over food all the time. And it's greatly nutritious, and it's much more widespread. What you can get from dandelion, what you can get from purslane, what you can get from
sheep sorrel.
Sheep sorrel, all of the different herbs.
Purple dead nettle.
Yeah.
Wild all over the place. Nettle tea. Instead of steaming nettle tea. Same effects. Now, I know we're coming off sounding like Yoel Gibbons. We're not.
No, we don't eat the bark. Not the outer bark.
Not the bark of the tree.
Yeah.
No, just the white willow bark.
Yeah.
Aspirin, the way it should be.
Yeah.
We're not Yoel Gibbons. So please don't think that we're coming off like, oh, we're experts in this or we've been doing this for a long time. No, we started teaching ourselves.
Yep.
And we always preface this information to you with, we are teaching ourselves, we are learning this, but you have to go research yourself.
And this is biblical. This is Leviticus. This is herbs for healing in the Bible.
If you get past the first 9 chapters of
Leviticus.
Thank you. That's for approaching the tabernacle. It's 10 and on after that, which is for really good living when you don't have electricity or running water. Okay? So it's a good thing to know. Now, on top of this, what we've talked about, like garden tools, like land, and I think that's a great idea, is talking to a local farmer about leasing some land. Just, it helps them survive.
Yeah.
It helps them survive.
If you also offer to help them with the work that they need, they're going to be much more amicable to the offer. They are so short on hands right now. And
that gets into the political of this afternoon, but if we forget to say it, look at the governments up here in Canada and in the States. You're being paid to stay home. That's exacerbating everything. Supply chain collapse, everything. So if you take the responsibility to look after yourself, because the only thing the governments are looking after is ways to destroy our lives.
Yeah.
They no longer work for the people. And we do have to fight that. Don't get me wrong, we have to fight that. But we also have to be self-sufficient at the same time, right? And be prepared. If you knew, now you know. Go do it.
And some of these farms are 1,000-acre farms and better. They don't mind taking a half acre here, take a half acre there, and get 10, 15 families on them. And there are some good conservative Christian farmers out there.
Yes, exactly.
That are looking to help as well.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't want to put their animals down.
No.
So, if you can give them something to compensate for them. Don't forget, if you haven't farmed at all or ranched or anything, it takes 3 to 4 years to start replacing stock that has died. Now, that whether it has died because they've had to slaughter it because the government told them to do so, or else, or because of grand solar minimum, where it's so cold there's no more feed for them, and instead of letting them starve to death, you slaughter them. If you have a few cows and a couple of bulls left, it takes 3 to 4 years to start being able to have enough cattle again to sell or to feed other people. Keep that in mind. It's very important. This is not just a 6-month thing coming up.
You have to think back to end of the supply chain and back to frontier supply processes. The frontier supply process includes canning vegetables, having gardens, holding grain aside for seed, working together to raise a barn, working together to initiate a homestead.
Okay, but now I can hear some of you thinking, because you've written to us, I'm too old and I'm too sick. Well, yeah, I understand that, but I also have a friend who has more health problems, severe life-threatening health problems than you can shake a stick at. And she has her home, and she is doing everything that she can to survive all of this and to provide for others. She's 74, going to be 75. She's canning every day. People bring in food for her to can. She gives some of it back in return, right? And they're bringing stuff into her. So that's people helping her. But then she turns around and helps other people. She was my partner when we were doing emergency preparedness classes, and we would get 100 people in a class, and we would have go packages ready for them to start up their own go kits. She still does that. She still gets out of her pension money. She makes little go kits and she hands them out to people and say, start getting ready. So if she can do that, any of us can do that. I'm 64.
She has to lay down several times a day because of energy. Now, with her health issues, we provided...
No.
Just wait. We provided one medication, natural medication. A suggestion, and she decided to try it. And she's found wonderful benefits from it. She's not having to lay down nearly as much. She has more energy. So it's very important to work on your own health.
Yes.
Through various aspects that are available that are outside of pharmaceuticals.
And again, I want to stress that this is for educational, entertainment purposes only. We are not professional medical people or anything like this. This is what we've discovered. This is what we've learned. This is what we've tried. And when we make that suggestion to other people, we always say, research it yourself and make your own decision. We are not medical doctors. Understood?
And consult your naturopath.
And yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we do that.
Yeah.
So the point is that she's 74. She has all these major problems, and she's still out there doing it, going,
yeah.
I'm going to survive this. And we're in an area where there's some seamounts popping off, and trimmers coming through. We've got land here that moves all the time to the point of where it makes you dizzy.
Yeah.
And we're going, oh boy. So it's not that we're in a safe area. We're not. Okay? And neither is anybody else anymore from what we've been seeing. But the point is that she's 74, going on 75, and she's still doing, even though she's sick. And her pension is very, very limited. All right? So she keeps going. So I know you can do it too. No matter how sick you are or how sick you feel. You can be doing stuff for yourself, and you should. You should until the day Father says, come home, child.
Yep.
You keep going. You don't just give in and wait, okay? You keep fighting and preparing. So now, let's hit grand solar minimum here, because we want to keep in the natural and not the political. Now, grand solar minimum, which hopefully you've all heard of by now, that is when the sun goes into its, quote, sleep mode. And even though they're calling it waking up again for cycle 25, its activity for heat is going to be way, way lower than normal. And we are going down into a deep mini ice age that once we're into it by 2025, it's not going to start coming out until 2100. Wait, how do you say that? Here go my numbers. 2075, 2095. That would make it to 20. Stop! Help!
I'm not sure.
It's going to go past 2075.
Anyway, it's well past the end of days when this is over. And God will have his reset by before that. So that's the good thing.
Okay, but if you are non-faith based, after 2095, whatever the next number is, okay.
You're going to have to look back at this because I'm not aware of these numbers.
Oh, I am. I've been aware of them since 2018. So anyway, what I'm trying to say...
Esther will go over these numbers and get back to you.
So what I'm trying to say is that this is not a short-term thing, okay? This is not a short-term thing with the cold. They're in other grand solar minimums. There have been years without summer. That means the food doesn't grow. Already, for any of you who garden in the Northern Hemisphere, you know that we are short the growing season 4 to 6 weeks on the front end in the spring and 4 weeks on the back end. So that has shortened our season by 2.5 months easily. Okay? So, and the climate's either gotten hotter and drier or colder and wetter. And with a grand solar minimum, these aren't stable conditions. They're always going to be changing. So you always have to have seed that adapts to your region. That's why you keep harvesting your own seed and keep using it and trading it with each other to make it stronger, okay? Because the corporate farms are going into all of our open heritage seed growers, and they're buying up all the open pollinated heirloom seeds so that we don't have any. And they're doing it in the basics, like your potatoes and your onions and your peas and your beans, okay,
Yeah.
and tomatoes. Those are the stock food that keeps you going all winter long.
Did you know that if you take an onion that has started to go bad and you plant it again, it will, and you can do this in a pot,
Yes.
a large pot. You plant that onion with well-fertilized soil, and it will grow up its seed crop.
Yes.
And that will begin growing in the spring. And by end of summer, you'll have onion seed for next year. And from one onion, you'll get enough seed for probably 200, 300 plants.
Yes. So this is a hard asset. Believe it or not, seeds are hard assets, which is what you need. And we want to keep going on from there. So grand solar minimum. This is a long time, all right? This is not just something that's going to be over in 3 months. So you need to be ready with that. Volcanoes activate, get hairier, as it were. So do earthquakes during grand solar minimums. So you need to be ready for that, and you need to, it's just a new lifestyle. Look at it this way. It's a new lifestyle. We were nice, fat, sassy, and happy. Now we got to get to be lean and marine, right?
Yeah. And
so we go from there.
All of this is complicated more greatly by the brown dwarf because, and we've got good imagery. Dorian actually sent us some imagery
as well.
And that was from 2015 of showing a round, bright object next to the sun and looked very much like the brown dwarf.
So all that's going to come in and affect the planet as well in the natural, which is if you knew.
So with that, we get an acceleration of earthquakes, volcanic activity, earth wobble, which is biblical, and earth tilt changes axis tilt relative to the sun. All of this has an effect as well on climate, on heating, on garden, and that brown dwarf interacts with the sun. Even though it's way small compared to our sun, it's still roughly 20 times the size of Jupiter. So it's going to have an effect on sun activity also.
Right.
And the last time it was around, as we understand, was something between 3,560 and 3,600 years ago. We don't have good records for what the effect was back then.
Because they wouldn't have known about who had earthquake here, who had VLFs there. They would just know about the volcanic activity in their areas and that it affected around the world.
But we're seeing intraplate fault shift to levels that we've never seen before. We're seeing fault shifts of plate edges that we've never seen before. Massive movement that I showed on our last program through China, through Russia, and a lot of movement in the United States as well. I don't cover seismology for every country in the world, but there's a lot going on.
So, again, if you knew what was coming, what would you do? And we're saying, and we need to stop here so people can go take a break, a brain break. But if you knew all of this was coming and in your area, instead of giving up, you go, okay, I'm going to prepare and I need to do it now. So think about these things. Hard asset. What is a hard asset to you that you can use wherever you live, whether it's in an urban or a suburban or rural area?
It's very important.
It's very important, and you can do it, and we want you to do it.
Yeah.
Father wants you to do it. We're to be here for him, right?
And for his other children. And
yes,
for
absolutely.
all that will be drawn.
And there will be people with normalcy bias, and we will talk about that in part 2 shortly. So why don't we end it for now?
All right.
Okay.
That's good.
And we will come back again in a few minutes with part 2. So as always, may God's blessings be with you always and always. And go cheerfully about your day. And we'll see you shortly on part 2.
Bye for now.
Bye.